Hi, everyone. It says I'm live. All right. I want to draw She-Ra, and I kind of want to talk while I draw She-Ra. So this is going to be a cold take on the new She-Ra design. Now the prompt for this is when the new She-Ra design for the new Netflix TV show of She-Ra came out. Lots of hot takes on Twitter, lots of back and forth, culture war all over again, Thundercats Roar 2.0. But now that I'm thinking about the She-Ra design, and I had like 2 interactions with people on Twitter where I kind of thought I was pretty cool about the whole thing. Like I wasn't bagging on the new She-Ra design. I was just saying things like, I don't think everyone who dislikes the new She-Ra design is harassing people or sending death threats to people. I don't think they're all sexists who have like a creepy interest in little girls or anything, right? So I was arguing what I thought was kind of a neutral point. But then both of those conversations descended into social justice and politics. So that's what got me thinking about it. And kind of like the big question is, why is there a big social justice fight over the new She-Ra? So for my cold take on the new She-Ra design, I first want to draw She-Ra and then try to get from She-Ra to the social justice part of it. Now, maybe the background for this live stream is there was a video by Diversity in Comics and The Quartering. Both of them argued that the new She-Ra design is an illustration of a social justice agenda in cartoons and animation, from a kind of a beautiful feminine ideal to a sort of defeminized new version of the character. My friend Lyle Convoy on his channel, Lyle Convoy Reviews, did kind of a call-out video making fun of both Diversity in Comics and The Quartering. And Lyle really gets animation. It's clearly like his big thing. And he actually made some really good points in defense of the She-Ra, the new She-Ra design. Now, I actually kind of like the new She-Ra design. Looking at it, it might be a show I would watch. I don't think I'd watch Thundercats Roar because that looks stupid, but I think the new She-Ra design is kind of a nice blend of anime and Western animation styles into a good action vibe. But I am interested in the social justice questions that are cropping up. So before we talk about social justice, let's draw us some She-Ra. Now, one of Lyle Convoy's first points was that most of this discussion is being based on a single screenshot. And a single screenshot is it's too little to judge the look of the character yet. Sometimes a character will look bad in one screenshot, but she will look better elsewhere. And I appreciate that point. But I do think it is true that the new She-Ra is a boyish girl character. She's a female character who is noticeably boyish in her build. And what I'm hoping by doing this drawing is I'll be able to kind of demonstrate what I mean by that. Now, I don't have a problem with certain girl characters having boyish features. And both the Twitter conversations I had, the other person got so heated that they didn't even have time to ask me about what my opinion on the new She-Ra design is, or they would have found out that I actually kind of like the new She-Ra design. I've talked about this before while talking about my own comic projects, but the main character for the comic I want to make is a deliberately boyish girl. It's a part of her character that she's supposed to look a little bit like a boy, and other characters comment on this. But I was also very influenced by SJW Art School, and this made me think a lot about what kind of story I wanted to tell, what I wanted my characters to be like. And I kind of was forced to think about the social justice perspective on female characters and the male gaze and the patriarchy and all that stuff. So I have some firsthand experience with what some people are talking about. So focusing on She-Ra. So what she got? Some people think she has a little bit of a masculine jaw. I think it's feminine because it comes down to a point, but she does have an angular jaw. So that would be kind of maybe point number 1, that the new She-Ra has a somewhat boyish look to her. She has sort of like the nice eyelashes, which are a good code of a girl character, and kind of the small anime nose. Another point that's been made is in favor of the kind of boy-ra, he-ra column, is that she has this widow's peak coming up, and the skull of her head is very noticeable. and then behind her sort of winged crown thing. By the way, I am a fake geek guy on She-Ra. I have never cared about this property. I've never watched this property. I'm only interested in this as kind of like well, in the same reason I was interested in Thundercats. I had no emotional connection to Thundercats, but I was kind of interested in the redesign as just an illustration of redesign and why people might redesign a character. And so this has been called a hair cape. So it's sort of like stuck to her head and flows around behind her. I actually think this is pretty feminine. You know, long flowing hair is a pretty feminine characteristic, but it's true that it's just pulled straight back and she's got a bit of this boyish widow's peak to her. Now she has a long neck, and long necks are typically a sign of female beauty. So that's not that bad. Now her rib cage. This is where Lyle Convoy's point about this screenshot maybe not necessarily being representative comes in. On his Twitter, he argued that some of the designers for the show have concept art of the new She-Ra, where she looks much more feminine than she does in this screenshot. But those drawings were done, those drawings looked like they were done as sort of fan art, not screenshots from the show. So this and one other screenshot are the best vision we get of the character. So what's the difference between a female body and a male body? Well, there's lots of differences among individuals. A male body could be like a skinny little wimp or a tough jock. A woman could have like a boyish body, or she could have like childbearing hips, like Caitlin says in Game of Thrones. But the general rule is hourglass shape for women's bodies, inverted triangle for male torsos with narrow hips. Now, that's the kind of hypersimplification of it. You're going to have lots of variety. So like I've said, I've drawn boyish characters. So what would be a trait of a boyish female character? Well, she'd have a strong triangle like this, a strong inverted triangle with the base of the triangle up here on the shoulders and the point of the triangle down here by the groin. Now, what does She-Ra have that helps make this look this way? She's got these shoulder pads that come up to a point up here and then come down here. Shoulder pad, shoulder pad. So she has a visual characteristic in this costume which emphasizes the idea of this triangle. And because the animation looks pretty good and the animators look talented, I doubt that they put those triangles on there by accident. I think they probably learned at some point about the inverted triangle in character design. So I'm betting that's there to make her kind of look like a tough warrior character. So there's at least one objective aspect to her visual design that emphasizes a masculine build as opposed to a feminine build. Now, what about her shoulders themselves underneath the shoulder pads? Well, for this, I got to do some measuring on my phone. What's interesting about her shoulders, they look like they're about one head wide each. I got to measure this on my phone here. Okay, they're less than one head. Those would be massive shoulders. So she's got about maybe half a head shoulders on each side with kind of a noticeable curve to her musculature. And that's okay. You know, for a girl warrior character, she's going to build some muscle. But again, strong pointed shoulder pads to emphasize this inverted triangle, and strong, fairly broad shoulders for a girl. You know, she looks like a farm girl who, lifts a lot of bales of hay, and she's built those nice deltoid muscles. All right, then she's got her gloves in her hand, kind of a nice angled point to her gloves down here. Her chest. So this has been like a lot of the heat. Oh, you think that She-Ra needs big boobs? She's a little teenage character. What's wrong with you? Boobs are irrelevant. I think they're partially relevant depending on what we're talking about. But what more important to the character's design is this skeleton. If you have like a big, I'm going to draw over here. If you have like a big buff man, right? Big buff man. He's got like all the male characteristics, big, broad shoulders. But then you put two giant boobs on him. That the big boobs aren't enough to make a woman. The skeletal structure is more important, but boobs are a immediately identifiable female characteristic. So if your point is to say this is a girl, this is a boy, it's a part of the design you should consider. So she does not have much boobs. Lyle Convoy made the point that she could be wearing baggy clothing. She could be wearing armor. I think this is supposed to be like a cloth tunic based on how flush it is with her gym shorts and her skirt. So her gym shorts are kind of flush with her skin, and it follows like a single curve. So I don't think this is like a big bulky piece of armor. I think this is the equivalent of a tunic. So there's a slight curve out here, and it comes back down to her hips. Now, here's where it could get tricky. So here's this curve out here, which is where her breast would be. But this also has the effect of making her rib cage look broader. And for rib cage design, the wider the angle at the bottom of the rib cage, the more masculine the character would be. So here's a Hulk rib cage, and the narrower the angle at the bottom of a rib cage, the more feminine the character will be. So here's, I don't know, like a beautiful, idealized woman. Now, I'm not saying that she should be a beautiful, idealized woman. I'm okay with kind of fun teenage characters. We have not gotten into the political aspect of this yet. We're still just focusing on her design itself. So her rib cage curves in. She does have a tiny waist, and then she does have some curve to her hips, but she's also got her legs astride in a wide horse stance. So this is giving her hips the illusion of being wider. If I draw that, her hips are just about as wide as her chest. So she has kind of what I would call a ruler-ish body. If you were to reduce her body to a simple shape, she would have it would be more like a ruler than it would be like an hourglass with that really strong curve on either side. So ruler body, kind of thick muscular legs, and even the gym shorts are kind of a little bit tomboyish, like it's what you work out in at the gym. I wish they would have given her just like full pants to maybe make it feel a little more fancy and a little less gym shorty. And then she's got a red cape coming back. So what I'm trying to point out is I think that this is a boyish skeletal frame. Now, as I've said, that is not wrong. I am literally working on a graphic novel with a girl character who has kind of a boyish, narrow hips body frame. And she will meet characters who are more feminine, and they'll actually kind of like comment on her boyish body. That is not wrong. She looks like kind of a young female hero rising up. Lyle Convoy made the point that the moral attributes of a character are more important than their physical appearance, and I agree. She could be hideous. She could have like a giant warty nose with hairs coming off it and beady little eyes. You know, this could be the new She-Ra. But if her soul was good, if she did moral things, that could still be a good story. That's the Cyrano de Bergerac character, and the Shrek movie rips this off. Cyrano de Bergerac is like this musketeer, and he's got this massive nose, and people will make fun of him for his nose, but Cyrano de Bergerac is brilliant and brave, and he loves Roxanne. And the whole point of Cyrano de Bergerac is that he has a panache, a white plume that represents his virtue and his courage. And the point of the story of Cyrano de Bergerac is that he preserves his white plume until the end. He preserves his courage and his nobility to the end. But he has this big, hideous nose. The Shrek character, an ogre who goes on a journey to save a princess, the Shrek character draws from the same idea of Cyrano de Bergerac. So, but in fantasy storytelling, good characters are often beautiful and bad characters are often ugly. Why is that? Why are the orcs in J.R.R. Tolkien like these hideous monstrosities who've been tortured and abused, with like sharp teeth and everything? Because J.R.R. Tolkien is telling a story in his own world where he's creating a myth. He was trying to create a myth for Britain, and he wanted the physical characteristics of his characters to reflect something of their morality or their connection to God. So the elves were kind of like the high race in Middle Earth, and they were very beautiful. They were all very beautiful. They were like far superior to men. They all had like this long flowing hair, and they were long life and great intelligence. So going back to J.R.R. Tolkien, kind of the father of modern high fantasy, there's often been a strong visual connection between good and evil. The good cowboy wears a white hat. The bad cowboy wears a black hat. The good elves look beautiful to the eye, like angels on earth. The bad orcs are hideous and gross and stinky looking. And after J.R.R. Tolkien kind of came this criticism of this idea. Well, are you saying that it's what's on the outside that counts? Are you saying that ugly people have ugly and evil souls and beautiful people have beautiful and noble souls? And I think Tolkien was aware of this. I don't think he was unsophisticated. I think he was using visual symbolism to reinforce his ideas about morality in the context of his story. But the point is that for a long time in fantasy storytelling, there has been an emphasis on idealizing beauty for good characters and emphasizing ugliness for evil characters. These are not Cyrano de Bergerac kind of characters. If the whole point of Cyrano de Bergerac is that he has a big ugly nose, but he is a good man, the whole point of fantasy characters is that you take one look at them and you know whether they are good and evil. So for the classic She-Ra He-Man design, I don't know anything about these characters. I only know their names and I've seen pictures of them. So who's He-Man? His name is literally He-Man. What does He-Man look like? He's got that kind of weird yellow bowl cut haircut. He's got his big broad chest with his X armor on. He is what his name is. His name is He-Man, and he looks like a He-Man. Well, what's She-Ra? I don't know anything about She-Ra, but she's got She-Ra, she in her name, like He-Man's got he in his name. So how did they draw She-Ra? As a grown-up woman, where her outfit kind of it allowed you to see the feminine shape of her body. So she kind of had like covered her breasts, and then she had a skirt, and you didn't really see what was underneath the skirt. She had the long flowing hair. She was a mature woman. She was a grown woman. And Lyle Convoy is right that if you do a teenage character, she does not have to have the same body proportions as an adult, mature female character. But now we're going to kind of transition into the question of why is social justice coming up in conversations about these characters? And maybe the critical thing is, as you're debating this, how do you know if you are suffering from confirmation bias? So I am concerned about social justice. I think social justice's ideas would be bad for art and animation if they were applied universally. So you would think that the new She-Ra would be a perfect opportunity for me to say, see, here is social justice ruining everything, except I don't hate the new She-Ra design. And that would actually be a straw man of my position. So let's talk about the conversations I had on Twitter. So one conversation was with a person who said that making fun of the new She-Ra design is transphobic, because if you think that the new She-Ra looks like a boy and you make fun of that, you're really making fun of trans people. And to me, that's invalid to start with, because what you're obviously doing is you're making fun of a fictional character who has certain physical characteristics that could be argued look like a boy. So that was a bit of a silly conversation. The other one I had was with an animator at Cartoon Network and DreamWorks, so not insignificant. And that was the conversation where I started by saying, not everyone who dislikes the new She-Ra design is a horrible person who's harassing people. All right, so that's my opening salvo. My opening salvo isn't, I hate new She-Ra, because I actually quite like new She-Ra. Where is my She-Ra design? Yeah, I like the new She-Ra design. So my opening salvo isn't, I hate the new She-Ra. My opening salvo is, not all X, people who dislike the She-Ra, are Y, harassers. This conversation quickly descended. The Cartoon Network DreamWorks animator argued that I must believe in a conspiracy theory. I must think that all animators on a Tuesday, they get together at a secret society. And, when they gather, there's black clouds in the sky, and there's lightning cracking menacingly, and there's probably gravestones in front of the Hall of Social Justice meeting place, rest in peace. And all the social justice warriors, they gather inside the secret hall and they discuss their evil plans. And their evil plans are to take over the world and change all cartoons to make them social justice friendly. And the problem with this is a straw man. I do not think there is an evil secret SJW clubhouse where all the SJWs gather and they make their evil plans to take over the world. So if that's the straw man, what is it that I'm concerned about? Well, what I'm concerned about is there is such a thing as social justice, and there is such a thing as a social justice agenda, meaning that they have goals they would like to accomplish. There are things they think are good and things they think are bad. So The problem I'm wrestling with is when I look at Shira, am I just doing confirmation bias and saying this Shira, it's proof of the question I already had. It's proof that social justice is a problem. So if Shira is down here, social justice is up here. And I do not have enough evidence to get us from social justice up here down to Shira down here. Lyle Convoy called this kind of conspiracy theory connecting the dots. I do not have enough evidence to get us from up here to down here. But I'm worried about what's up here. So I've already drawn Shira. We're going to kind of like put aside Shira for the moment. Forget about Shira. Let's just talk about social justice for a bit. And what might make it easier is if you don't even make it about social justice in your mind necessarily. Just think about any ideology, any set of beliefs. We're going to say set of beliefs X. We're talking about X. X could be social justice. X could be Ayn Randian libertarianism. X could be conservatism. X could be some brand of Christianity. X could be Islam. X is a set of beliefs. All right, so first point, there are teachers. And I'm going to use the American university system as my symbol or space so I have some kind of limit on this. There are teachers, and these teachers, all of them have a set of beliefs, even if they claim they don't. You have to have a set of beliefs just to function and walk around. If you get out of bed in the morning, that means you believe that you can get out of bed and go about your day, and that's worthwhile. If you don't believe that, then you're a nihilist and you commit suicide or you go shoot a bunch of people. Everybody who kind of operates in our society has some set of beliefs. Now, some of the people teaching at universities believe in X. I don't know the proportions. I haven't done a poll of the number of people, but based on my experience, it is a significant number of people. So it's not just one or two teachers in the entire country who believe X. A significant number of teachers believe X. Now, part of my point is I'm talking about social justice, and I'm also using X as a symbol for anything. So it's come across in this channel that I'm completely fascinated with social justice. I think this is one of the most interesting things that's ever happened in history. And I've spent tons of time reading really obscure stuff. I probably have read a lot more social justice material than many people who call themselves advocates of social justice, because I'm actually fascinated with it. Now, the problem with this X, the problem with this set of beliefs is that most sets of beliefs have a lot of complex ideas to them. They might have like a library of material that's more than you can ever read in a lifetime. If we're talking about Christians, not only is there the Bible, there's tons of books on theology, more than you can read in a lifetime. If we're talking about atheism, there's tons of books on evolution and atheism. If we're talking about Islam, tons of books on interpreting Islam. Talking about social justice, tons and tons of books. There are too much for you to read in a lifetime. So there's all this complexity up here. As the teachers teach about it, they kind of have to dumb it down. They kind of have to simplify it down to some basic ideas. So what are, in Christianity, you could say the gospel is a simplification of a bunch of complex ideas down into something pretty simple. For Islam, something being halal is a simplification of a bunch of complex ideas down into some basics. So what are some simplifications of all of this complex social justice stuff? Male gaze. Male gaze is a simplification of a lot of complex material on social justice. Body positivity and body diversity. Body positivity. Male gaze, body positivity, patriarchy. All right, so the X teachers believe these concepts are true. They believe they exist. Male gaze, the art which caters to a presumed male audience, to the capitalistic use of female bodies, objectifying them for the view of men and their pornographic interests. Body positivity. All bodies are beautiful. The idea of a beautiful body is patriarchal and it harms women, and we need to have multiple representations of different types of bodies so that people feel that their body is beautiful and matters too. Patriarchy. Invisible favoring of men by our system, which devalues women and values men. Girls are only deficient boys, and boys are privileged in a patriarchy over girls. They're institutionally benefited, and girls are institutionally oppressed and harmed by patriarchy. And patriarchy functions invisibly at all levels of society. So it's not just a law that says women can't vote. It's all our media, all our stories, all our language, the words like he and her. All of this upholds patriarchy. So there's the complex social justice garbage up here, tons and tons and tons of books. The teachers take all that stuff and they facilitate it down to a few key ideas. And this goes out to the students, regardless of whether the students believe in it or not. The students learn something about X. So we can have a thought bubble here where X is in their heads. Now, the reason I know this is significant is when I was a student in SJW art school, I learned about these things and I didn't accept them as true. I didn't say, I believe that all of this stuff I'm hearing is automatically true just because my teachers say it is. Yet, just the process of learning about it affects how you think. So when I would draw my characters, I would become more concerned about, well, gee, am I catering to the male gaze? Am I promoting body part positivity? Will people think I'm promoting patriarchy? Not because I believe these concepts were true, but because I was interested in appealing to people, selling a comic book to people that they would like. So I would start, if my girl character started out with kind of like noticeably large breasts and somewhat feminine hips, I would then make her more and more boyish, unconsciously, without really realizing what I was doing, until she had no boobs and no hips, because I was thinking, by doing this, I will appeal to people like this. They will like my character more. And then my realization was, wait a second, I don't have to change the way I imagine my character because I'm scared of these people. Yeah, it's part of the story that my original character is a boyish girl character, but I don't have to literally draw her the way I would draw a boy. It is okay for me to give her some boobs because she's a young teenage girl, and to give her some hips, even if in my mind I conceive of her as a boyish character. So pretty much I just learned that I don't need to let this dictate the way I make my art. Now here's the question, is that true of everyone? So of these students, some of them will believe absolutely in what their teachers say. So not only did they learn about X, we now have a new X student going out into the world to make art and animation. And they believe in 100% in this, the whole social justice scheme. They are on purpose trying to do that in their art. For every one of them, let's say there may be like 10 students who are a bit more whatever about it, like they don't spend their days dreaming about social justice and reading social justice theory. They're just kind of whatever, but they'll say, yeah, I'm a feminist. I'm for social justice. They're kind of whatever about it, but they sort of lean in this direction. They're generally trying to be with it. They're trying to be on the right side of history. Now, this characterized my conversation with this animator, because I asked her, if you believe that body positivity is important, what rules do you follow to make sure that you are creating characters who are body positive? Because I noticed that you draw characters who are still pleasing to look at. You draw cute characters. You don't draw big fat 300-pound girls with hairy warty noses on their faces. You draw cute skinny girls. So aren't you kind of violating the body positive values that you're advocating for? And she didn't care. She said, I don't care about that stuff. I just try to make nice art. So she is at this is where I see the cognitive dissonance. So if this student, the X student, sincerely believes in social justice is everything they care about, then these 10 students, they say, yeah, I'm okay with social justice, but they'll still draw cute girls that pander to the male gaze, and they won't see a tension between that. They won't see how what they do and what they love is contradicted by the body of literature up here. If you want a really good illustration of this, the radical thinks that Wonder Woman is sexist, that Wonder Woman oppresses women. The 10 pseudo-social justice advocates, the 10 low information voters, cultural Christianity. That since X is supposed to be generic, a good illustration of this would be cultural Christianity. If this big X is a person who really believes in all of the Bible, then these 10 X's are people who go to church because whatever, they got like nice music there or something, but they don't really believe any of it. If this X is someone who sincerely believes in social justice, these 10 X's say, yeah, I like social justice, but they're whatever on being consistent with that. All right. So what I'm worried is So look how far we got. We went from the big theory to the teachers down to the students, and we now have two groups of social justice friendly students, the believer and the cultural people who just go along with social justice. What I'm worried about is this stuff up here, the literature, the radical social justice theory, because if that were applied consistently, these 10 social justice warriors down here would be very unhappy, because then all of their work would be seen as problematic. All of their work would be seen as upholding patriarchy, and that makes them uncomfortable. So as long as social justice is kind of like tucked away up here in a college classroom, it's not affecting anybody. It's just a few idiots on college campus, whatever. It's the trickle down and the teaching where it comes out into the culture that we then start talking about this stuff. Now, I started this video by saying there is no conspiracy theory. I do not see a direct line from social justice down to She-Ra. But if you look at She-Ra in kind of a broader context, if you pull the camera back and look at other cartoons and other comic books, then I can see why people see She-Ra as an illustration of the problem of social justice. So if we lived in a world where there was no social justice and the new She-Ra cartoon came out, I would have no problem with it whatsoever. I would say, wow, this looks like a fun cartoon. Yeah, I'll enjoy watching this. But she doesn't exist in isolation. She exists as part of a broader culture where there are lots of cartoons coming out. Now, this is where maybe like the connect the dot, conspiracy theory stuff might come in. So let me make sure, if you're listening, that no one misunderstands me. I am not saying that She-Ra is part of a conspiracy. It's silly to say that there's a conspiracy. I am saying that people are perceiving She-Ra as part of something broader, and we have to understand the broader things that they're looking at. Think about the Powerpuff Girls remake. Who was left out of the Powerpuff Girls remake? Cerebellum, the kind of beautiful redheaded woman who's an assistant to a mayor. She's very smart and she has large breasts. And this is kind of a joke. The joke is that Cerebellum, no one looks at Cerebellum's face. They always hide her face. Everyone just looks at her massive breasts. It's sort of a mature, it's sort of a mature gag in the context of a superhero show, the Powerpuff Girls. So when they remake the Powerpuff Girls, they take out Cerebellum's character entirely, because the whole point of her character is kind of a boob joke, but combined with a brilliant mind. Miss Keen. Miss Keen was the Powerpuff Girls teacher. She had kind of that like nice black haircut, and she had boobs, and they weren't massive boobs. She was just like a simple little character. She had kind of little feet, and she had a pair of boobs because she was a grown-up woman. Then the new version of Miss Keen comes out, and it looks like she has had double breast cancer, and both of her breasts have been amputated. They're just completely gone. They're completely cut off. And a lot of people noticed this. And a lot of people thought, well, what's up with this? Why you're remaking the Powerpuff Girls? Why is Cerebellum gone and Miss Keen changed so dramatically? And I would argue that this is a pretty clear-cut example of male gaze theory creeping its way into a cartoon remake. What's the idea of male gaze? That it's a sexist creation of idealized female body standards for the heterosexual male gaze, the heterosexual male audience. So if you believe that and you're asked to remake Powerpuff Girls, the only way to fix Miss Keen is to cut off her boobs, and the only way to fix Cerebellum is to remove Cerebellum, because that's the whole point of the character. She's kind of a boob joke. So if that's a clear-cut example, She-Ra is not a clear-cut example. She's a teenage girl. That's fine. She gets to be a teenage girl. You're free to redesign or rework a character. What I think people are worried about, though, is they are looking at broader trends, and this is the trend they are noticing when characters are changed or transformed. It is from more idealized, more mature, more bodacious female characters to less mature, less idealized, less bodacious female characters. When a character's gender is changed as they're reimagined, the trend seems to be to change them from a boy to a girl version of a character. When a character's race is changed, the tendency is for them to change from a Caucasian character to a black character. So let's see, body type, sex, race. This seems to be a prevailing trend in recent cartoons, that when a character is reimagined, they're reimagined as less idealized, less of them are men, less of them are white. It is not wrong to reimagine characters in a new version and make them different. I was at first kind of groaning about the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where they're going to make April O'Neil a black woman, because April O'Neil has always been a Caucasian lady with red hair, kind of a fiery, hot-headed redhead type. But I believe that people deserve a little freedom to reinvent characters and make them different. Batman has been reinvented a lot of times, and that's a fun part of the Batman character, is that he keeps getting reinvented. What I'm worried about is that artists don't really have the freedom to reinvent characters the way they want, unless they reinvent them along this pattern. When is the last time you have seen a traditionally black character reimagined as white? When is the last time you've seen a traditionally female character reinvented as male? When is the last time you saw a plain character reinvented as bodacious, or if it's a boy, from like a skinny, wimpy boy to a hyper-masculine, super He-Man boy? Now, you can probably find me examples. And if you can find me examples of this transformation, this would undermine the sort of social justice theory, because that would mean that people are free to just reinvent characters. They do what comes naturally to them. If it makes more sense or would make an interesting story for this formerly black character to be a white character, maybe it makes sense in the context of the story, yeah, they'll go for it. They're free to try it out. But if we are in a culture where social justice informs the way artists look at the world, and it informs the way that business people cater their products, they think diversity is a selling point. They think progressivism is a selling point. They are always going to want to have one-sided transformation of characters. And I think the proof of this is that this is right, is the 4chan trolling of Steven Universe on Tumblr. Now, I don't care if you're left, right, or center. Everyone seems to know that the Steven Universe fandom on Tumblr is toxic. There was literally a girl who was bullied nearly to the point of suicide because they didn't like how she drew some of the characters. They thought she was body shaming and promoting toxic patriarchy by drawing the characters too skinny or too pretty. And so what 4chan did to troll Steven Universe is they took fan art of Steven Universe and they edited it to make characters blonde and blue-eyed. And by doing that, they were people on Tumblr said, this is whitewashing, this is horrible. And even people who were involved in Steven Universe said, they're trolling you, don't pay them any attention. The reason it was a funny troll is that the people on 4chan knew that people on Tumblr would freak out. If you draw a traditionally black character as white, people are going to freak out and accuse you of whitewashing. If you draw a traditionally female character as a boy, some people might freak out and say gender bending is offensive against trans people. It's transphobic. If you draw a fat character as skinny, they're going to accuse you of body shaming and saying that fat people aren't really people, that fat people don't have dignity. So what that means is there really isn't freedom to reinvent characters any way you want. You have to reinvent them down the path of diversity. Now, you're an individual artist. You can do whatever you want as an individual, and whatever to the social justice warriors who get on your case about it. But in the context of an industry, it's different, because the industry is worried about catering to as many people as possible. And if they think that social justice warriors are their market, then they will cater to that market. That's why I think there needs to be, that's why I think that really the best cure to social justice is for just you to be a mesh, for you to be an individual and say, I will draw what I want. I will decide what my story and my characters look like. These people on the internet, they're not the be all and the end all of how I draw and how I imagine characters in my mind. So that's a good reason why I'm not too bent out of shape over the new She-Ra. I don't think that the new She-Ra should be like the final frontier of the war on social justice, in part because I don't know what went on inside the creators' minds while they created the new She-Ra. Let me get my drawing of She-Ra back again. So, okay, so I don't hate the new She-Ra design, but I think it is true that the new She-Ra design's skeletal structure, based on the screenshot we have, looks boyish, and that aspects of her visual design, like her shoulder pads, deliberately heighten the boyishness of this character. It is not wrong for her to look that way. It looks like it might be a fun show, but the general pattern seems to be from idealized forms of beauty to non-idealized forms of beauty, from from traditional kind of Tolkien-esque fantasy ideas to Tumblr style fantasy ideas. And I'm worried about that bigger cultural problem, even if I'm not that worried about She-Ra. What I think the prescription should be is, if you think that, if you dislike the new She-Ra costume, don't get too bent out of shape about it, because that's not the most important frontier of the fight against social justice. You can do more to fight against social justice by telling a story that you think is really sincere and has good moral values and speaks against that kind of nuttiness. It's sort of like good storytelling is very naturally anti-SJW, because I don't think social justice understands human nature that well. So if you get human nature and you tell a good story, you're already going to be doing damage to the social justice overarching problem, the cultural problem. Social justice is not a conspiracy theory because it doesn't need to have people conspiring together. I don't know if it was Diversity in Comics or Sargon of Akkad who said this, but if everyone agrees, they don't need to conspire together because they all believe in the same male gaze, patriarchy, body positivity stuff. So they just naturally do what occurs to them. When they sit down and draw, the way they think of beauty and the way they think of what good storytelling is, and it is informed by the ideals of social justice. Rather than having us fixate on Thundercats Roar or She-Ra as a critical example of the problem with social justice, I would rather more people kind of go back to the original sources, go back to the Marxists and the postmodern thinkers and read what they have to say and be knowledgeable of that. Because the more knowledgeable you are of it, the more worried you are of it. But then you can kind of like be a bit more chill about She-Ra. So She-Ra could be used as an illustration of the problem with social justice. I wouldn't, because it looks like it'll be a fun cartoon with a pretty idealized female character going on adventures and doing what's right. I'd rather we focus on the important stuff and take the fight to them. There clearly is a culture war surrounding She-Ra, where all of the same like left, right, you're a Nazi, you're a right-wing fascist kind of arguments come into the conversation almost instantly. The same thing is true if you go back and actually have a political debate with social justice warriors. I don't want these political debates trickling down into childhood characters, but the people who think that She-Ra is an illustration of the problem with social justice, I think they were a bit too quick to jump the gun on their hot take, but they are not wrong about the ideas of social justice which inform this style of design. So I think that's my cold take on the She-Ra character. That means that I had a comment on my previous video from my boy Avid Comic Reader, back to feminism. Yes, I'm going to be, before I go into any more radical feminism, I am going to be showing you guys the essay by Linda Nochlin, Why Are There No Great Women Artists? Because I think if you read that, you are going to have a good sense of what the feminist perspective on art history is. And that gives a lot of context to these kinds of debates over objectifying women or designing them for the male gaze or for the capitalist patriarchy. The more we understand what the original feminists said about that, the less we'll have to guess about the hot takes on Twitter about these topics. That's it. 14 people are here. Let's see here. Let's see if I can read the chat without doxing myself. Oh, wow, we got a lot of people. Super Ant was here. She-Roar. Mike Whitaker was here. Criticism or dislike equals sexism and hate. Don't you know that? Jonah Arts is here. If you have any questions for me, at me with my name before I go. Jonah Arts says, everyone has different hairlines. Yes, everyone has different hairlines. Women don't tend to have a widow's peak. That tends to be a male hairline. I hope this version of She-Ra will be super pansexual and woke, says Lama Ihante. Well, who knows? They're already having her in a rebellion, which makes me wonder if there's some Trump symbolism in the new cartoon. Would it be possible for you to meet Nurkish to talk about Comicsgate? Nurkish doesn't identify himself with Comicsgate. He just likes to make fun of things. I mean, I'd be okay talking with Nurkish. I think we have different focuses. Nurkish likes to make fun of really bad comics, and I'm interested in social justice, which I think social justice helps people make really bad comics. So there's some overlap, but they're not directly overlap. It's not a straw man. It's called Any Article. Okay, so that's talking about when I was talking about the conspiracy accusation. Just judging by my gut, but there's implied arrogance in the shots, even when it comes to the other characters and all the action will serve either to justify the behavior. All right, looks like people are having some interesting back and forth. And I've got a comment. Have you ever seen? Good. Is that my chin? Don't want to face reveal here. Have you ever seen the new Glimmer? I have not seen the new Glimmer. Ma'am. Is that my chin? What is that? Those are my glasses. All right. Number one Marmaduke fan. We can see your nose, dude. Nose reveal. Nose reveal. You saw my big, beautiful nose. Yeah, very fitting since I talked about Cyrano de Bergerac in this one. All right, I'm going to check the chat. All right, well, nose reveal. Hashtag nose reveal on the number one Marmaduke fan show. All right, gang. Last call for any questions, and I think we'll wrap up. The boogers. Oh, yeah. People get to see like all my nose hair and everything. This is worse than Zach's thigh reveals when he doesn't have a hijab for his lap. The lack of forehead and massive pointed chin is very male. Oh, for the She-Ra design. This is Raul Aguilera. Oh, you mean me. You mean me because I have a massive pointed chin. Is that it? I don't know if you're talking about me or She-Ra. Right? That's the reason why Christians who believe in the Bible, we don't all have to have like a secret meeting to plan our agenda. We just believe in the Bible and we live our lives. And so when you meet another Christian who believes in the Bible, they believe similar things to the one you met in the other state, even though we never had like a secret cabal together. Fantastic. I'm rewatching the old Sargon videos because I'm thinking about Gamergate and the importance of that. I think that we still haven't identified the important ideas from Gamergate that we need to take into the future. And I'm going to be doing a video about that. All right, gang, I did my last call for comments, and I think we are good. I said what I wanted to say. To review, there is no conspiracy theory. I don't mind the new She-Ra design, even though I do think it is a boyish design, probably informed by a little bit of male gaze theory somewhere along the line, but I don't know the hearts and minds of the creator. I'll still watch it. I'm sure I'll still enjoy the new She-Ra, but I'm more worried about the social justice, the actual social justice theory up here than I am about the cartoons down here. So if you're debating the new She-Ra cartoon, be chill about it. Make your points in a straightforward way. Kind of look at the objective aspects of the character to make your point. Not every cartoon character is proof of the grand SJW conspiracy theory to take over the world and make us all woke. But I do see the masculinity in her design. So that sums up my cold take on this. Anything else? Number one Marmaduke fan, you mean you don't have secret Christian conspiracy meetings? What the heck have I been attending? You're talking about church, huh? All right. Hey, it's been fun, guys, but I got to run. So, I'm number one Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Thanks for joining this stream. And I'm going to watch the new She-Ra when it comes out. I'm not going to watch the new Thundercats Roar, but who knows? Maybe the new She-Ra will give me a passion for a character and a property I have no nostalgia or care for. I've never cared about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I've never cared about She-Ra, Prince of Power. We'll see. Maybe this new show will give me a new reason to go check those out. Love you guys, and I'll catch you later.